sexuality.
Hello, and welcome to Secular Sexuality. I am Bianca, and with me is Christy Powell.
Howdy.
And today we are joined by Shannon Q. Hello, Shannon.
Hi guys,
Excuse
I'm
me,
really excited.
High Priestess Shannon
Hi,
Q.
Priestess Shannon Q.
Formal
I'm
titles
so
only.
sorry.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I gave it to myself. I ordained myself High Priestess. But I appreciate the recognition that I deserve for ordaining myself.
We are getting just a little bit of feedback, I think.
I appreciate the recognition that I deserve. Oh, yeah, there I am again.
We do sound charming, and
We
so
do
I
sound-
really appreciate that
Oh my God,
opportunity.
that's-
But okay, I think we've got that sorted out. Apologies, everybody.
That is my bad. Okay, so Shannon, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do in the YouTubes? And maybe tell us a little bit about sexual humanism and what that is.
Oh, okay. Well, the sexual humanism is kind of a long but wonderful story. I'm Shannon Q. I run a YouTube channel called Shannon Q because I've got no creative capabilities whatsoever. And on that channel, I discuss the intersection between psychology and faith. And I also engage in complex conversations with people whose views are diametrically opposed to mine to do a little bit of conversation modeling on how you can have more positive or mutually beneficial interactions with people that you have massive disagreements with. I also do a lot of videos that are for advocacy, and I'm a huge proponent of advocacy for the LGBT community, and that is where the Church of Sexual Humanism came from. I don't know if do you guys want me to go into the whole sexual humanism story now? It takes a bit of time.
Oh yes,
to tell
please
it.
do. We've got all the time in the world. Tell us this
Yeah,
amazing story.
An hour and a half to talk about
Yeah.
sexuality and humanism is kind of what we budgeted for, you know?
So go for it.
Okay, so my partner, his name is Paul. He runs a YouTube channel called Apologia. As a result of that, he does a lot of videos on young earth creationism. He also does a lot of really fabulous textual criticism and theology videos, but one of the series that he does is called Ham and Eggs, and it's on Ken Ham and his crew, essentially. They have a live news show called Answers News. Because I'm a wonderful and supportive partner, I watch a lot lot of them with him so that I can give him some feedback because we work together on a lot of stuff.
That
Like,
is
we're both
wonderful.
partners.
I'm sorry. That is wonderful and supportive. I mean, my girlfriend checks into this show like every couple of weeks, and I'm very happy to hear it. But yeah, that's a passion and a dedication.
Yeah.
Yeah, it means a lot to him, and it sometimes is incredibly painful for me because I have a very empathetic nature and I get really frustrated with some of the things that they're saying. But we work very well together and in contributing to the content that each other creates. So it's great that we have that to share as well. But as a result, I ended up watching a lot of these Answers News shows, and I started to notice and it's not subtle, so it's not difficult to notice a really horrifying trend that they were not only just ardently anti-LGBT, but they were anti-LGBT propagandists, and it to a massively detrimental level. So when they brought up anybody in the LGBT community in just about any context, they would say that if you as a Christian are supportive of anybody who's in the LGBT community or are even sympathetic to somebody who's in the LGBT community, that you aren't really a Christian. You belong to the religion of sexual humanism. And this was a consistent theme, consistent enough that I was able to go back just like 7 or 8 videos and get massive amounts of clips of them saying this. So I decided that if they wanted being supportive of LGBTQIA plus people to be a religion, then I would make it a religion. So I did. I made it a religion. So I started the religion of sexual humanism. And what I did was I allowed people to ordain themselves. Anybody was welcome. It's a completely open religion. You just have to not be the only tenet that we had was don't be an asshole to people, be supportive and open and listen. And you can ordain yourself in whatever designation you see fit that suits you.
Nice.
And I opened a PayPal fundraising account up, because the good thing about PayPal as opposed to something like GoFundMe is all of the funds that you get in PayPal you get to keep, but it still has public visibility to all of the funds that are going in. It was very important to me to be transparent where people were giving me money. And I started a clothing line because I'd never had a Teespring before, even though like I've got about 15,000 subscribers. I felt weird about opening a Teespring. So this was a good opportunity for me to do something good with it. So I opened a Teespring and I sold sexual humanist merchandise in the Teespring, and Paul actually made the logos for me. I donated 50% of the Teespring and 100% of everything that was donated to PayPal to send an LGBT student to university in the state of Kentucky, which is where Ken Ham operates. And we raised just under $5,000 and funded a scholarship that was specifically not just for an LGBT student, but for a Christian LGBT student, because I wanted to make sure that they had representation. Because as I was picking the scholarships, it kind of hit me that a lot of, an LGBT student who's Christian has a lot of unique struggles, because you feel as though the members of your faith don't accept you, but you still want to hold on to your faith and still be yourself, but you don't really feel like you can necessarily always turn to the atheist community because there's not a lot of acceptance there for you because of your faith. So, and one of the stipulations for this particular scholarship that I funded was that you had to demonstrate a desire and have a plan to make an effort to bridge gaps and advocate for LGBT people within your church and other churches. And since that's where a lot of the problem is, and you can't deconvert everyone, I thought that that would be a good place to start, if you can at least get churches to be more accepting for whatever that's worth. So yeah, we did it. It was fantastic. The response was beyond phenomenal. I had to ordain another person underneath me in order to give other people designations and ordinations. I designated Narvardia, who runs a channel out of Australia. Yeah, she was great. I love her. Meredith's great. And she was ordaining people for me in my absence, because it was a full-time job to ordain people on Twitter and Facebook
I'm
for like 2 weeks. It was great. It was utterly fantastic.
And how much again did you guys end up raising through the Teespring?
The Teespring itself, I had it broken down and I should have written it, but the Teespring itself, I think I brought in about 300 from the Teespring, and the PayPal was the biggest one.
Okay.
Because people can donate as little as 50 cents and as much as up to infinity on the PayPal. So it allowed people a little bit more bandwidth, but it was good to have a couple of options, because some people wanted something tangible that they could hold on to and represent. And other people wanted to be able to contribute what they could. But all together. And I also did a show with Mr. Atheist, who's a good friend of mine, and he donated all the super chats from that show, as well as directing people to PayPal. But Canadian, it was $4,663. I mean, I think that's 50 cents American. I'm not sure.
We'll have to work it out. Yeah, and I guess we should point out your Teespring is still open at Shannon Q store. And we've got links to the PayPal and everything else in the footnotes to the episode.
Oh, the fundraising for that is done. So if you want to donate to me, I do want to make it very, very clear. The PayPal, my PayPal's open, but the fundraising PayPal is closed. And the Teespring, like if you want to buy a shirt, that's great. But I just want to make it clear that at this point, if you are just supporting me right now until I can figure out what my next endeavor is going to be. I did it for up until, and I've already made the donation. So I just want to be very, very clear. I don't want anybody to give me any money or donations or purchase anything under any false pretenses.
That makes sense.
That.
Thank you for clearing that up.
No
Yeah, that's amazing. And now it was my impression, and I might be wrong about this, that Bodhi, who's the one who coined the term sexual humanist.
Yeah.
Was that a Freudian slip, or was that a phrase that they were using?
Oh no, he coined the term and it was using it over and over and
Okay.
over and over again. Almost any time they brought up an article that was about um, trans rights or gay marriage or sexual education in schools, they're just essentially against sex being even conversed about unilaterally, it
So
seems.
basically the opposite of this show.
Yeah, I just love the idea that just putting the word sex or sexual in front of something is like an insult. I mean, it's meant to make the term humanist sound darker and more sinister, whereas the rest of us are like, sex is pretty great.
Yeah,
you know,
that's awesome.
This is not an insult.
Sorry, guys. Life sucks for you, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, and the humanist portion too, because they're not a fan of humanists because that's the atheist religion.
Sure.
Yep.
So them having sexual on top of humanist is just to them, to their minds, is an added layer of reprehensibility to them.
Yeah. It's the ultimate scare tactic. It's like,
Mhm.
guys,
Right.
they're not
You're not a
just
Christian,
humanists. They're sexual.
No. And come join. It's a religion now. Come join.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. Everybody's welcome.
I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and especially how secular humanism sounds kind of like and might have some of the same tenets as secular sexuality, which is something that Dr. Darrell Wright coined. But first, we do have one caller on the line that we would love to talk to real quick.
We're going to speak to parents.
Hello, you are on the air with V, Christy, and Shannon. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I just started my first week of university, so I'm doing really well.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, that's a really exciting way to frame it, because that first week of university can usually be pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
So congratulations that you actually have like free time and are watching YouTube.
Oh, the first week is usually just syllabus anyway.
Yeah, that's actually accurate. Although today I'm taking a women, gender, sexuality studies course, and I went to the library, and I got like so many books today.
Nice.
Ooh, it's gonna be
Awesome.
it's gonna be worth it. Yeah.
See, that sounds like an amazing time to me. I love that.
Yeah, no, really. And it's weird too because at the end of this month I'm starting hormones, so it's gonna be really weird.
Oh, wow. Congratulations again. This is a big month for you then.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. It's a really weird, jam-packed month. But yeah, I'm calling today because I just wanted to personally thank Shannon Q for the amazing work she's done on YouTube and the YouTube community. Because
Math Blade, is that you?
Huh?
Who am I talking to?
It
Parents?
says parents.
Parents. Okay, sorry, parents. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's fine. No, I just wanted to personally thank you because, I've watched the work that you've done with Mr. Atheist and a lot of talking about the quote unquote Christian counseling that's very detrimental to people. And I've had experience with that sort of counseling, and it's just very validating to see someone talk about it and really bring it to light.
I'm so sorry.
So thank you for that.
Did you go to an ACA deliverance ministry type counseling, NCCA?
No, it was different. It was called Celebrate Recovery. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
It's very much modeled after a 12-step type program. It's usually centered around addiction, but it's also pretty loosely managed, so it can be kind of anything depending on who's leading.
I haven't looked at that yet. I'm in the midst of looking at another one. Parents, thank you. I'm overwhelmed. That's so kind.
Oh, of course. No, really. I mean, I think this is the smallest thing I could do for everything that, that you people are doing. You guys put your life and everything into these YouTube channels, and if I had money, I would subscribe and become Patreons to all of you guys.
Thank you so much.
Anyway.
What you just gave me is worth
Yeah, no.
significantly more than money. So thank you very, very much. I
you.
appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm a little teary
I'm
because
so
I'm
glad.
I'm weird.
You're making her cry.
That's so kind. Thank you.
That's awesome.
We have so many more segments. You don't cry yet.
Don't cry. Did I cry through all of them? Is that a rule? You guys didn't tell me I couldn't cry.
Oh my
There's no crying in podcasting.
Thank you so much for calling, parents. We really appreciate it.
Good luck with school.
Yeah, of course.
and with
Sorry,
the
it was a little
hormones.
bit random, but I appreciate it.
No, this is exactly what we want to hear.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, call back. Let us know how university and everything is going.
Yeah, I'm going to Western Washington University. It's kind of near Canada, like Vancouver, BC. It's like
Okay.
in a small town. If you guys anyone knows where that is. I know two of you are in Texas, and I think Shannon Q, I think you're in Toronto, right?
I'm in Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia, sorry.
Nova Scotia. Yeah, it's okay.
Sorry.
Don't worry about that.
Fine.
Toronto is awful compared to Nova Scotia, though, just for the record.
It's like, it's fine. I am insulted, but it's fine.
I'll get over it.
Oh.
I'm writing down the name of what you celebrate recovery. I'm writing it on a
Thank
piece
you.
of because I'd like to look into it because I hadn't heard about it. So thank you for letting me know, because if there's anything that I love, it's researching crackpot pseudo psychological programs that are very loosely licensed and present themselves as though they are reputable and effective and well researched. That's one of my pet peeves in life since I got into this realm. Discovering that Christian counseling was even a thing was a day of pure rage that only a couple people had to deal with, but it was a lot to deal with because I was not happy. So I'll look into that. So thank you for letting me know that they exist.
Yeah,
and
of
also
course.
I'm incredibly sorry that they were damaging to you.
Oh no! I mean, I appreciate your apology. Really, I do appreciate that sentiment. But I've been getting like help from secular psychologists and such. So I've been going through a lot of, and now I'm in a like trans support group, and I have a lot of friends here that are totally chill with this sort of thing. So I'm doing very well mentally right now.
Good.
But yeah, I was just gonna say like, oh yeah, of course. No, sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, please keep going.
I was just going to add one thing I want to add to the Celebrate Recovery is that they're based out of some church called Saddleback Church, and somewhere I think in California, and they have different things from alcoholism to quote unquote pornography addiction and quote unquote same sex attraction. They call it SSA, like it's a sickness, not like. Yeah.
If you throw an acronym on it, it must be a problem.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. Something to medically pathologize, which is, of course, ridiculous and thoroughly debunked by the World Health Organization and the American Psychological Association, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's terrible to hear that these things not only exist, but honestly, if you're in a major city or even if you're in the shadow of a major city, you can likely find specifically Celebrate Recovery, never mind all of the different permutations and different models and versions. And it's an unfortunate world to be in. So I guess I'll join her in just saying, thank you, Shannon, for helping to debunk these sorts of things and keeping them on your radar.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's a endeavor of pure rage. Watching people make money off of indoctrinating people into self-hatred and increasing harm when they purport themselves and present themselves to be the person that you can turn to when you need the help the most is it's the worst to me. Like, I've been meaning to do a video on conversion therapy for a long time, and every time I look into it, I get like this. Like, I get to the point that like I can't, because which is selfish of me because I've never had to go through something like that. But just reading the stories and doing the research, just
it's
right.
Stuff.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. There's a reason I pace them out a couple months at a time, because they're bad.
Yeah.
They're bad.
Gosh. Well, thank you so much for calling, parents. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, of course, thanks. And I want to just let you guys know that no matter what's been happening at the ACA the last few months, that everyone is human, and like I'm talking about the whole trans.
The kerfuffle.
I can't remember the whole. Yeah. But I mean, whatever happened, there are many sides of the story, and I acknowledge all sides. But I really still love this organization. Like, no matter what happens, I mean, people are people; they're going to mess up. So,
Wow,
Well,
I appreciate that.
Certainly appreciate that, and just want to, I guess, reaffirm that we appreciate everybody remaining involved and recognize that, there was a really difficult time for a lot of us for a while, but the folks who are here are working really, really hard, and we're really proud that you're, still part of our organization. So thank you.
Of course, no problem. I appreciate everything.
Okay, thanks so much, parents. Have a great night.
Thank you, parents.
You too.
Bye. Oh man, I remember the very first time that I was leaving New Jersey to go to Portland for grad school, and it was that last summer there before I left. I had just come to terms with my bisexuality, hadn't come out yet, but had just started realizing to myself oh, this is a thing. So I was before I went, my mom was kind of like, "Can you please come to our therapist once before you go?" And I honestly, I don't know too much about him, except that he was a Christian therapist. I don't know if he was part of any of these groups. I remember sitting in the waiting room because, it's my mom. What am I going to do? Say no.
Sure.
And I had just gotten the most bisexual haircut ever. And it both sides were shaved and the middle was all slicked back. And I was just sitting there yep, yeah, he's gonna tag me right away. But it's fine. And then I went to Portland and blended right in because everybody had that haircut. But yeah, I guess we can talk a little bit more. We've got a couple people on hold, but we also have a little bit more time to take calls in a bit. First, though, I would love to talk to you how you would define sexual humanism, and then kind of maybe throw it over to Christy because I know you had some questions about how that correlates to what we consider to be secular sexuality here on the show.
Interesting. I bet you there's probably a fair amount of overlap in my conceptualization of it. One of the good things about it, I think, is that it's kind of made to order anybody. That's one of the reasons I allowed people to have their own designations rather than giving them a designation myself, is because I wanted people to recognize that whatever they are, they fit. Like whatever you are, whatever your orientation, whatever your identity, whatever it is, you fit and you're welcome. This is a place where you can go. This is a place where you can have camaraderie with people who aren't like you also. And because sometimes I think we tend to kind of polarize into our camps a little bit just by sometimes self-protection and necessity, because we feel as though we need to have somebody to commiserate with or other people to commiserate with that have a unique understanding of our position,
right,
and what that means in the world. Pardon me, sorry, I'm getting over a cold. And expanding this out allowed a large conglomeration of people to recognize and start interacting with each other and talk about what that meant, and talk about what that meant in an environment that allowed them all to feel accepted and welcome and important. So to me, that's my conceptualization. And also a place where you can do that, have those conversations or have no conversation at all and still be present, and utilize that energy as a positive force as well, to do something good, to make an actual on the ground, boots on the ground, affecting someone's actual life change, and turn a wall of hate into a wave of good because we've come together and unified. So that's kind of how I saw it. So I think there may be some overlap, but you guys are far more specialized and educated in a lot of these concepts than I am. So I'm fascinated to hear where you think overlap is, and because we're open, we can improve. We have very few tenets. We're a new religion, so.
Yeah, Well, it's a interesting conversation to have because, I mean, V and I sat down maybe a month ago and really kind of tried to work out, like, what is secular? What is sexuality? Like, what is the point of the show? The hell is it that we're doing here? And in all of that, I don't know that we really had, like, enumerated these things. So in getting ready for this week and in talking about sexual humanism, we went back to the tape, when Dr. Ray set this show up and kind of outlined in that very first episode what secular sexuality actually looks like. So I'm going to just kind of run through these real quickly, if I may, and then I'd love to just, have y'all kind of weigh in about what that means and what that looks like. In any case, secular sexuality, somebody who believes and practices sex in a safe and ethical manner, someone who not only enjoys sex, but enjoys and interacts with people in a way that respects their sexuality and celebrates sex-positive ideas and behaviors. Somebody who works to make sure that consenting adults are able to make their own sexual choices free from laws and other obligations. They advocate for science-based sex education in schools, strive to protect children and other less powerful members of our society from being exploited. They're free to engage in non-exploitative sex and strive to challenge our preconceived or religiously inspired notions of sex and sexuality and live in a life that's supportive of others and affirming for ourselves. That's a lot of word salad to say, sex should be whatever we want it to be to the extent that it's life-giving and not harming or infringing on somebody else.
I love all of it. I think all of that, it's really well thought through. I only have one thing to potentially contribute, and you can feel free to smack me, as I have a lot of people who are in my fan base. That's a weird thing to say. I don't like that. who are in my like circle of people who enjoy my content and interact with me, who are actually asexual. And I've had many interesting conversations about how sometimes when people are talking about sexuality, they don't feel as though they fit into the mix. And however, they do enjoy relationships and discussions. And sometimes people don't understand that asexuality doesn't mean that you have zero sex drive at all. Like it's a spectrum like other things. You could be interested in sex, but only in very certain scenarios, or only solo, or potentially just not at all. So do you feel that there's a place? I'm assuming that the answer is obviously yes. There's a place for ace people in that sphere as well, even though they wouldn't be enjoying sex or engaging or necessarily the same, because they have some little
that's a really good point. My best friend from college is Arrow Ace, and we've had some very, very interesting conversations. And Z was so nice to me as I was just like, but explain to me. I was that person for a very long time. But I think that was that's a really, really good point. How would we phrase that?
Yeah, it is currently couched in this notion of being a secular sexual is somebody who enjoys sex. So I think that that's a really interesting open question. And to be honest with you, I haven't spent enough time among the ace community to, I guess, poke around the edges of the question of what is sex, what is sexuality, and what is maybe sexuality in a asexual way, which, sounds like I'm just sort of repeating the same words with different emphasis and trying to make it sound brilliant. But really what I'm meaning to suggest is that if we recognize sex as being not just more than a penis and a vagina, but also existing outside of penises and outside of vulvas and outside of sex in terms of like physical, biological stimulation, is it possible to be asexual without having a sexualized component to, watching a film or something along those lines? That is maybe an existential or philosophical question that I really don't feel is appropriate to answer. So I would love to kind of kick that to the audience and maybe hear, because I know we've got a number of Ace and Arrow viewers. Is that something that you would feel describes you? Because I certainly don't want to apply that label, and I'm really open to being challenged on this kind of working definition that Daryl put together so many years ago.
Yeah, I think a big part of it too is while religious people, and in this case Christians, do in fact like say sex is bad for a while, they then also say sex is necessary for procreation, for serving your husband, for all of these things. So in that way, I would say that asexual people are very welcomed in just because we are challenging those preconceived religious notions about
Absolutely.
whether or not sex is even a requirement, whether or not we were made for procreation, you know, all of these terms that Christians like to throw out there to, you know, sometimes guilt people who have never had sex before marriage and so don't know if they're asexual until they're in that situation. And then, you know, there's a big problem because all of a sudden I'm supposed to like this, I'm supposed to do this, and there's no way out.
Well, you're starting from this notion that asexuality is valid, which is an assumption that doesn't necessarily resonate with folks in that community. So that's the problem right there.
Right. They
because
Christians don't like validating anything other than hetero monogamy.
Because of course asexuality is a real thing. I mean, I hate to even, I mean, it's like, yeah, bananas are real. Like there's not a conversation to be had here. We can talk about whether they're the best fruit or the only amazing fruit.
Or the one that proves God.
Right. But in any case, yeah, that's why
no one
that
asked for a
conversation
Ray
never gets
Comfort
off the
joke.
ground.
I'm so sorry. No one asked.
You don't need to ask for it. They write themselves. I appreciate, you guys are fantastic. I really appreciate that. It's one of the, because I have so many ace viewers, one of the first things, like some of them came to me feeling like head hung low when this happened because it says sexual humanism. And I said, you know, you have a form of sexuality. Being asexual is a form of sexuality. This is for you too. Like choose your designation. This is for everybody, because a lot of the times I think they may feel excluded about conversations regarding sex, but they have some of the same, like V just brought up, they have a lot of the same pressures and societal standards thrust upon them that they don't comport to and are maybe less understood because a lot of people, you know, I like sex. And I also find it's difficult for me to imagine not liking sex because I like sex. Like that's my preference. But it may be difficult for somebody who's ace to imagine what it's like to be like me. And it also brings up questions about how sex extends to intimacy, because you can have intimacy without sex, but there's a lot of overlap in those areas that isn't always addressed because sometimes they end up being intertwined because intimacy leads to sex or is seen as synonymous with sex. And those are like an ace person can enjoy a good serious cuddle, but not want it to lead to sex. But that intimacy is a sexual experience for them without the penetration or the orgasm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In my limited understanding based on the interactions that I've
No,
had.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And, you know, when we are playing around with these words, they can be very squishy and the definitions are difficult. But I would maintain, or, you know, I guess in truth, I'm teaching a workshop this week where we sort of break things down into lust and intimacy and trust, and how all of those things are sort of in a constant interplay of rock, paper, scissors with one another. But I would suggest, or I do suggest in that workshop, that lust is not just, I want to put my parts on your parts. Lust is, I want to know everything about you. Lust is that new relationship energy. Lust is that excitement, that fascination, that interest in who somebody is as a person. You know, intimacy is actually like getting where you're racing towards and sharing those secrets and feeling that closeness. Lust is that excitement to be held. Intimacy is the actual being held, you know, to use one example. So if we can use that idea of lust or that idea of sexuality or whatever else, then of course I think it is encompassing to everybody. Is that a fair definition or one that folks in the ACE community would identify with for themselves? I couldn't speak on that because I haven't spent time in that community, but I would love to have that conversation.
That is a really good question, especially for aro people and aromantic people. How does that play into the idea of intimacy and lust, especially, you know, maybe not the emotions themselves, but the way we discuss it as a society. Yeah. I mean, speaking of asexual people.
Yeah, we've got a couple of folks on the line that may be able to offer us some insight if you'd like to jump into the calls.
Yeah, let's go with Laura in the UK. Hi, Laura. You're on the air.
Hi, Laura.
I can barely hear you.
Oh, hello.
Oh, that's better.
Okay.
Problem is, am I echoing?
No, you're good.
You're all set. What can we help you with?
Excellent. So I'm asexual. Yes, that's true. Which did confuse a street preacher a couple of months ago.
Not hard to do, but I still applaud you for doing it.
Oh, it was glorious. I mean, I almost had the spirit of Dillahunty in there as well. So I'm pretty knowledgeable about the Bible and things like that, and know lots of anti-apologetics. And I'm just walking up the street wearing a quite nice, cute summer dress, and I'm walking up this pedestrian street, and there's a street preacher, and he's like, and men who want to be women. As soon as he saw me, that comes out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Oh, you're throwing a gauntlet. Okay, let me take that gauntlet and shove it where the sun doesn't shine. So I'm debating him fairly fiercely, not swearing, just, confronting him with the nonsense that is coming out. I ended up with about 30 to 40 people around us after a while.
Wow.
And, we're going back on all sorts of things. I asked him if slavery was wrong. He said, yes, it's wrong. I said, yeah, that's not what your Bible says. Slavery is acceptable in the Bible. No, it isn't. He said, yes, it is. You've got a Bible in your hand. Exodus 21, read it out to us. And so he goes, okay, starts flipping the pages, and he gets to Exodus 21 and he does a quick skim and he goes, I'm not reading all that. So what do you mean? It's not even a page. Don't worry, I said to the crowd, I've got most of that memorized, and I basically quoted what it says. The people were aghast because most people haven't read that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the part that was hilarious was he said I was guilty of a sexual sin. I said...
Because you were wearing a dress?
Yeah.
Because you were existing?
Well, this is the problem. I find that, and it's sort of going off on a tangent here, but it is relevant. I find that a lot of people get confused by language. That, the word sex is written on a birth certificate, and the act of having sex and sexuality and sexual preference, these are all kind of linked, but there's subtle definitions in them. So we have a lot of words that mean the same thing. And so it allows people to bridge one to another. You believe something? Well, therefore atheism is a religion because you believe something, that kind of thing, Yeah. So there's this guy saying I was guilty of a sexual sin because I'm transgender and wearing a dress, And he says, and I said, I'm an asexual. I'm still a virgin. I've never had sex, not interested in it either. How can I possibly be committing a sexual sin when I am literally not having sex? And he raised his Bible in the air and he said, we're all sinners to God. And I shouted to the crowd. I said, spoke out to the crowd. I said, did you notice how he completely avoided my question? And everybody laughed.
Goodness. Yeah.
So, and at one point I had a girl who was next to me, and someone else was talking because there was a couple of people chatting with him here and there. And this is a guy on a megaphone. He's got like a speaker headset, and at his feet an amplifier. So he was drowning out people, and so I had this girl saying, this is hate speech now. I should phone the police because it's illegal, which is true. There's a difference between free speech and hate speech.
Right.
And he's doing the whole, transgender people going to hell, basically anything that's a sin going to hell type stuff. So I said, no, don't. Think about what's going on right now. 30 minutes ago, he was yelling on the street with no one paying attention, thinking his beliefs are harmless. And now everyone can see he's a horrible, hateful person. His beliefs and his God is utterly hateful in reality when contrasted with what he was sugarcoating a while ago. And everyone here can see it. He's doing exactly the opposite of what he intended to do. He's not drawing people towards his belief system. He's pushing people away from it.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and the best thing about it was that, I had somewhere to go, and so I sort of started to disengage. I said, "But I got to go now, thanks, that was good fun." I started pulling back, and I had a girl that pushed her way through the crowd, which was about 18, 19, that kind of an age. And she said, "You were amazing, can I give you a hug?"
Aw.
That was amazing.
Aw,
It
that's
really was.
awesome.
And I've only been trans for a year, effectively. And sorry, no, that's not true. I've known since I was 7. I've only been living it for a year. And unfortunately, in the UK, transgender stuff, I'm looking at 4 years to get hormones because the system is all gatekeepy and stupid and horrible. So I'm not, I'm still physiologically still a guy with a hair and, makeup and clothes. So, but it was a great step in my transition.
Yeah.
Because I was comfortable with who I was, I'm talking to shout to the crowd in my slightly softer feminine voice compared to the harder male voice that I would do before. So yeah, that was quite cool.
Wow, that is an amazing story.
But there was another one as well, which was Manchester Pride. So we have a bit of a problem in the UK with TERFs, if you've ever heard of them.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's the acronym Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminists, this idea of people who, allegedly push forward a feminist agenda, but who don't include all women, which of course includes trans women.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is it's the tribalism team perspective. So let's say I'm an average trans person. So something for the audience who may not realize this. So there's effectively a difference between someone who's transgender and transsexual. So someone who's transgender, if I fancied women before and I transition and I still fancy women, then that makes me transgender. So my sexuality preference, my sexual preference hasn't changed. For some people, when you take hormones, it's rare, but it happens. Their sexual preference changes as well, and that's where transsexual comes in. That's where that phrase.
Yeah, and I just want to very briefly acknowledge for the audience that a lot of those words have kind of different meanings in different areas, particularly in the States. Transsexual is not as common of a term, and there are some other sort of competing definitions. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just kind of want to let everybody know that if they're hearing those words in different contexts, it's good to sort of ask what people intend to mean by them, because in different contexts, they do tend to mean different things.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, words evolve all the time.
Absolutely.
I've heard Matt Dillon say words have they have usages, not meanings.
Right.
And an example I always use is the word wireless. When I was growing up, the only people who referred to what said of the word wireless were old people, and they were talking about a radio. Whereas today, wireless keyboard, wireless printer, etc., the word has evolved and changed over time. So transsexual used to be used in a broad sense of anybody who, gender dysphoria type stuff, anyone transgender. But as I said, some people, their sexual preference changes as well. So going back to the TERF stuff, from what I understood, I chatted to a lesbian lady who there's a group called the LGBT Foundation in Manchester, and they're equal rights and a support group and all sorts of things, a charity, basically a bit like what the ACA do for atheism, they do for LGBT people.
Right.
So the lady explained to me that back in the 60s, 70s kind of period, there was this basically a bunch of lesbian feminists who had the idea of man-free spaces. So basically they wanted safe spaces. And an example would be their home would be a man-free zone. And they wouldn't even allow the gas man to come to check the meter. Things like that. It had to be a gas woman if such a thing existed back then. So the ideology kind of has roots back to there. And so their idea is that the idea of me, let's say I was just an average, a guy who fancied women. I'm asexual, so it doesn't apply to me. But if I fancied women and I transition, I now become a lesbian because I still fancy women. But now I identify as a woman.
Right.
Therefore, that makes me lesbian. And they're like, no, you can't join our team because you've got a penis, and they'll use any excuse to say, no, you can't be a part of our team.
Yeah.
And on the opposite side, if you've got a trans man, so a woman who transitions to be a man, they're gender traitors because they left the team.
So damaging and awful.
Yeah. But so Manchester Pride happened, and by coincidence, the previous year, the first day I came out and went out as a woman with a friend was the 24th of August last year. And it was amazing, and the following day was Manchester Pride. We were going to watch it. I got agoraphobia, so I don't go out very much. So the idea of going out as me, I spent first 25 years of my life was feeling shame about it because I didn't understand it. And then I got on the internet and discovered, there are people like me. Because my only reference point up to then was, a prostitute in a Dirty Harry movie.
Right.
Or a drag queen or Rocky Horror Picture Show, and that wasn't me at all. Just a guy like wearing dresses. I need to express myself as a girl in the same way as I needed to breathe. So when I got on the internet, I discovered, there are people like me. That was when I came to accept myself. But for 20 years, what was 19 years really, I lived closeted. I used to go to little gatherings of a few friends and things like that. But because I was always scared of, what will my mum think? What will the neighbours think? What will friends think and colleagues think and, people on the street think? So last year, I went with a friend to Manchester. She bought a plane ticket to come to visit me so that we could go together. That's what a great friend she is. So the following day, went to watch Pride, and that was fantastic. And it was great to sort of be myself and watch other people being themselves and all that kind of stuff. Great stuff. So this year, what happened was I went to go to Manchester Pride, and my favourite spot is on Deansgate with my back towards the Church of Scientology. Because they can't stand LGBT people at all. And so the idea of me enjoying the show with my back to them, is like a little middle finger in my mind. So what happened was, there I am waiting. The first float comes around the corner, and then next thing you know, there's a bunch of people jump out in front, and it's the TERFs.
Oh, no.
Basically protesting, and they basically crashed the party. And I was really annoyed about it because it's like, and they've done this a couple of other places. Did it in London last year. Now they're doing it again here. So I was angry. I was annoyed. And I'm like, I spoke to a policeman who was like, these people, a protest group, why are you letting them do this? And I think, so here in the UK a few years ago, there was a big fuss because there's something called Rotherham. Basically, a bunch of people were abusing children, and they didn't take action. The authorities didn't take action because they were scared of being labelled as anti-Muslim. And I think the reason why they let them continue this protest was because they didn't want to be labelled as anti-lesbian on the day of Pride.
Right.
So as a result, they let them go, and they basically did this really slow march. Normally, Pride, it's like people just walk by, protest, different floats and things like that. It's really nice. But what happened was they were going really slow. So I basically stood out, and I put my thumb down as they were going past, and I got some abuse of that. And then I ended up thinking, you know what, I'm going to call them out. And so I shouted to the crowd as much as I could to say, these people are not a part of Pride. Don't clap them. They hate people like me for being trans. And I had some people in the crowd booing them, and of course these people hated me for that. So the floats are going by, but the light's stopping and starting because they're doing this slow march. And I was annoyed. I was angry at this because it's like, yeah, this is all this mess is going on, and the flow had gone because some hateful people were being allowed to, gate crash the party and screw it up for everybody.
Right.
So, so when people would move, and then they'd stop in front, and then they'd move and stop, and so on. So next thing you know, there's some trans people there from Mermaids and Sparkle, which is a UK transgender charity. And I basically walked out into the road and I said, the reason why you're going so slow is because a bunch of TERFs went and crashed the party. Did they? Yeah. But, I challenged them on it. I even had people in the crowd booing at them. I went, did you? Yeah. Come on, march with us, they said.
Aw.
Come on, march with us. And so I did. And it was amazing.
Aw,
It was.
That's great.
Sounds like it's been a really incredible year.
It has.
Taking a lot of bravery and courage to get there, but
Right.
certainly.
And even in this year, it feels like you're standing up for yourself and for other people. That's amazing.
Well, it was amazing. I've got this really good coping strategy with how to deal with good and bad stuff, because I get people who a couple of guys, and they sort of one nudge the deal and goes, look, my direction. Or I walk past and the next thing you know, there's laughter behind me. Or I'll get someone who will say, oh, there's another she here as I walk by. People are some people are assholes.
Yeah.
Sure.
I actually think of it as I've nicknamed it the Brexit effect, but you could call it the Trump effect. It works the same way. 10 years ago, if someone was homophobic or something, their mate would say, "Come on, mate, that's not on." They'd be silenced into shame. But then we had a referendum, or Trump gets in, and now people think I can now tell these black people to F off back home.
Right.
Sure.
Things like that, and that they can unload the hate in their minds. That's allowed other people to say, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And I can now be homophobic, and I can be transphobic, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of, I hope there's going to be a backlash from this, because I have one of the things I learned in history was that politics goes from one side to the other, and often in extremes. And I wonder if, this is a sort of backlash to the PC stuff, political correctness stuff, and eventually it'll push back the opposite way, because it's like, maybe with Trump, for example, people will realize having a TV celebrity as president, maybe those politicians are.
Well, actually, yeah, I think that you're right on that front. There are the number of candidates running for the Democratic nomination is ridiculous, but the people themselves are substantially more progressive, and the people who used to be perfectly acceptable are now being criticized for being too moderate. So I do think that particular Overton window is shifting a little bit to the left.
I mean, there's truth to that on the granular level. It can get very confusing and difficult to see which way the pendulum is swinging. But I honestly don't like the metaphor of the pendulum because I just, maybe I'm too much of a humanist. Maybe I'm blinded by my own ambitions or hopes for the future. But I feel very much that this is sort of a death rattle in a lot of ways, that this rise of fundamentalism, while devastating and upsetting in so many ways, is also a bit of a sign of good things to come. I remember a speech I heard by George Roderick, the painter, when he talks about how when a culture dies, it starts to become sort of a caricature of itself there towards the end, where some of the characteristics of it get overly exaggerated while the rest of it sort of fades away until everything ends. And you see a lot of that in Dr. Dale Ray's book, The God Virus, as he talks about sort of the different ways that religion adapts and presses back against, these modern thoughts. And none of that to say that, there aren't incredible battles to be fought, but I do feel like on the whole, we're vastly farther along than we were 10 years ago, even if, Laura, I absolutely hear what you're saying about how this sort of Brexit, Trump, rise of fundamentalism in a lot of places around the world has been really, really painful to watch, and how many, many, many people have been the victims of what might be a statistical blip, but is certainly devastating to a person. And so I just appreciate and applaud your efforts in being visible and being confident in that visibility, even as it sounds like it's been a struggle.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
It
calling
is-
in,
it-
Laura. We are going to have to move along a little bit because we do have some other callers. But thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, Laura.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, it really is a beautiful story, and I certainly hope I don't come across as dismissive with my hopefulness.
No, it is optimism, and I appreciate that. But yeah, again, we can be cautiously optimistic while understanding that it's currently shit for some people.
Absolutely.
We do have a couple more callers, but first I would like to just jump back into sexual humanism for a little bit and just ask what's next for sexual humanism. This is something that clearly a lot of people like. Clearly it's something that people are very excited about and are willing to contribute to. So is there anything on the horizon? I know that, Christy, you had an example that you were gonna run with.
Oh, I would love to hear it. Please tell me.
Well, I'm very curious, what maybe phase 2 in your invasion of the hearts and minds of the world might look like. But I was able to catch part of your conversation with Ben Shetler, where you basically took his argument and distilled it down to this idea that it's inherently homophobic and discriminatory to suggest that homosexuality is a choice and that choice is wrong. And he kind of kept trying to say, well, we're just trying to have a conversation. And you really pointed out, this is a conversation about human rights, and you don't get to say that and then say it's not discriminatory. If I can put words in your mouth and paraphrase you in that way. But you did that in part by proposing this idea that maybe we should have laws against heterosexual intercourse.
I did.
And just go ahead and say that's wrong, that you shouldn't have sex hetero, that's gross, and why would you, and all of this. And it really inspired me, sort of in the same way that like the Church of Satan has come along and said, we want equal representation under the law. If you're going to do this, then we should be able to put up our own statues next to your, 10 commandments, and has been able to get a lot of traction in that way. And so I just was really tickled by the idea of sexual humanism putting forth these notions of, we should outlaw heterosexual sex and only allow, procreative IVF and these other things. And so I'm just proposing that to you as maybe like step 5 in the invasion plan.
To be very clear, secular sexuality does
The
support all
atheist
forms of
community
sex,
and
as
everybody-
does the ACA. But hypothetically, that's an interesting thought experiment.
I just love the notion of framing the argument in the way that you did, by saying that to suggest that, you can be gay, but don't act on it. Is such a discriminatory and inherently hateful statement that's so often said behind this guise of smiles and why can't we all just get along and talk out our differences, because I want to live in that world. I want to live in the world that you describe, where we should be able to discuss our differences in a civil and kind way with people we disagree with. But I don't want to live in a world where it's acceptable to ignore the human rights of some 10-20% of the world's population.
No, I completely agree with that. It's something that I struggle with too, because I want to get mad, right?
Yeah.
I want to get mad, but I've never changed somebody's mind while I was screaming at them.
Sure.
I never have, but I have changed people's mind by being patient with them before. So I'm trying, it's a skill I'm trying to refine, because it's a difficult line to walk, and you guys do it all the time too here, where you take calls, and sometimes it's very difficult on the spot to be able to be precise in your speech and carefully think things through. And yeah, we've all had that moment where like, I should have said that thing. Why didn't I say that thing? Or why did I say that thing? Or I misspoke. So I completely get you on the, like, that's the world I want to live in. But one of the things that I always say is that your goals need to align with your intentions, and you need to future project in order to figure out whether those intentions are going to land on your goals. And whenever I future project a conversation, which is something that I attempt to do, I'm a scenario runner. I run scenarios in my head ahead of time regarding conversations and regard just about everything, and to the point of almost absurdity, really, to be honest with you. But
I feel that.
he's got me.
I'd like to just give a shout out to my therapist who really helped me get past that. That was very much me for a great many years.
My brain would be way too quiet if I didn't do that.
Mm-hmm. Right, I'd just be sitting still. I would be paralyzed. I'd know where to go or what to do.
Freeze up more bandwidth to fantasize about sex.
There you go.
Well, there you go. Like, I could use some more bandwidth.
I'm putting that computing power to good use. I assure you.
But when I do that, like, and it does take all kinds. So I think that there are other strategies that are incredibly effective too. But I'd like to think that my strategies, even though it's open to fair criticism and I want to be able to refine it, I'm not as open to the critiques that, you're not harsh enough, because I think that there's a lot of those conversations that are engaged in harshly. And sometimes, and it's not even about the person that you're conversing with. A lot of the times it's about the people that are listening, that they may be reached by an approach where they feel like you're understanding the points of the interlocutor and still are pushing back despite the fact that you understand. Whereas if you're approaching a little bit more aggressively, the people can push aside that you understand, and then they can shut down. Mm-hmm. So, but I love the idea of like making a campaign where I point out the hypocrisy, just the innate hypocrisy of saying, I'm not a bigot for saying that you shouldn't be able to have the rights that I have, because who you are is inherently wrong and you should be like me. But I'd need to find a way to wrap that around not hetero shaming either, because all sexuality is valid, including
hetero. I'm bi. Heterosexual sex. I'm hoping to have some heterosexual sex later tonight if I'm lucky. But I think it is something that gets missed, and something that I'm not trying to relitigate a video that nobody else is watching while they're here with us, but that you let him skirt around was this idea that
I'd love to hear this.
Without heterosexual sex, or without a world in which people were 90% gay or whatever else, that generations would cease to exist, that humanity would not be able to procreate, which I find...
Did you watch where I said we would all do in vitro fertilization?
And that's a good comeback, but I feel like I hear that all the time. If we had an island that was nothing but lesbians and blah, 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 we wouldn't... Humanity finds a way. Life finds a way. I mean, sexuality finds a way. There are plenty of gay people that are having heterosexual intercourse and having children and everything else. And I guess I just want to take a more expansive view on these labels and definitions, and recognize that you can be, as Laura pointed out, a lesbian with a penis, with the ability to have, male gametes and everything else. And so there are plenty of opportunities for quote unquote gay people to procreate and have sex and have sexuality in a way that, our society, our species is not about to die out. For me, it's even funnier when they bring in the whole gender identity thing, because I'll have conversations. I've had conversations with family members who are very concerned that the gender binary is breaking down. And I'm like, well, why? Okay, worst case scenario for you. Sure. Okay, imagine your worst scenario where nobody identifies as anything. We're still going to procreate. Like, we're still going to get up in the morning. You still have like a 50-50 chance, right? At that point?
It's not, there's nothing stopping people from continuing to live exactly as we are living, even in your worst case nightmare scenario. But
we won't be able to use the color of your outfit to know what your junk looks like.
Right?
And
it's disturbing.
That is just a terrifying world, I guess.
So, not being able to imagine other people's genitalia the second you meet them, those very, very sex crazy.
I'm going to start crying again. Don't. I know how to live.
my God.
Christy, that's a really good criticism. I just want you to know that I appreciate that criticism. That's something I'm going to take on board, and I thank you for it, because it's not something that came to mind in the moment. And it's something that would have been beneficial in that dialogue and something I should think about more. So I appreciate you bringing it to the forefront of my mind. So thank you.
And I mean, in the moment, it's certainly not even a critique. I don't know that it was necessarily even germane to the conversation. I just know that I hear that argument over and over and over, that homosexuality can't be natural because it would mean the end of our species, which is just ludicrous in so many ways. I mean, never mind the fact that there are so many animals that have homosexual relationships. We just spoke to an expert about such a thing last week. But anyway, I just think that's an important ideal to push back against.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking, something else that the Satanic Temple, I believe, is doing now in Georgia, perhaps. And I think it was the Satanic Temple.
Not the Church of Satan.
Some people were pointing that out. I did that before I watched Hail Satan, and now I won't forget.
Yeah, no, I didn't speak there.
But what they would do is they would say the 6-week abortion bans were unconstitutional because it went against their religion.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, right?
My religion says abort now.
Right? Being able to access safe abortion is part of their religion. And if you are restricting that, then they have a right to call that out. So maybe something along those lines, since you guys are a religion,
That's brilliant.
Yeah, isn't that so interesting? I found that so fun.
That is fascinating. And I've actually had people contact me about how, and this is frightening too. I discovered this when I was doing the Christian counseling series as well, how abjectly easy it is to get an ordination and establish a church, really. So I'm actually looking into what it would entail to even establish a church, and whether or not I could do so internationally, if I would have to do it in Canada, if I would have to do it in the States, if I'd have to do it in both. I had somebody reach out to me on Discord the other day. I actually have to write them back, who's like one of like 4 or 5 people who I gave, the fun ordinations to. That it's like, I'm going to go get this in writing and put it on my wall and marry people with this ordination.
Nice.
And that is fascinating to me. Like, if I can figure out a way to do that and people can just ordain themselves online and officially and start officiating religious typically religious ceremonies, that would be ideal. So I was looking into that just because I think it would be fantastic to have people who are just good people that want to be supportive of human rights all over the world, just being able to ordain themselves in a religion of everyone that's accepting of all, and start being able to do those things for people that may find it more difficult to find an officiant, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Yeah. So I was thinking that might be a cool thing to do, but I don't know all what it entails. But I really, really like the idea of, if I could do that, a good next step would be writing tenets for a religion that could directly contradict. Yeah, you guys are giving me great ideas. These are great ideas. I'm so glad I came. Thank you. You're hired.
I love it.
My new think tank.
Yes. Okay, we have 2 more callers. We're going to run through pretty quick, and then we'll wrap everything up. If that sounds good with you guys.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely been looking forward for a chance to speak with Mo, so we'll just go ahead and jump on the air. Mo, how can we help you?
Hi, how are you?
Not too bad. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, actually, there's a struggle with me. Hi, B. Hi, Shannon.
Hello.
I love your work. I love everything about you. Just, well, it's just that, okay, my sister died this year, and
sorry to hear that.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, well, it was murder, but anyway.
Oh my goodness.
And I've been struggling since then, because um, damn, it is just okay.
Take
So
your time.
I've been struggling because I'm disabled, right? I think I talked to Christy before when Mantelahunty was in.
Okay.
Talked about that we are disabled, that I have a so fucked up like illness that I cannot even move my right side correctly. And well, I finally got like cyber girlfriend, you could say. And she is like she told me like, oh, wanna do it? And then I wasn't like feeling it. So I was like asexual about it. So like I don't know how to cope with that. Like I know that my sister is dead, and then I have to move on. But it is so fucking difficult.
Sure.
I'm sorry to use that language, but
No, it's an extreme emotion, and you're welcome to express it in the way that you need to.
And I've been like depressed, clinically depressed. I'm taking right now like a drop and then a pill every single day. And the suicidal thoughts are coming.
What drug are you taking? I'm so sorry, but what drug are you taking?
Well, it's in Spanish, so I don't know how to say it. It's haloperidol.
Is it like Adderall?
Uh,
Is it an amphetamine, or is it a benzodiazepine, or is it an SSRI or an MAIO? And you didn't. The reason I asked that is if you're taking those, some of those can have the side effect of some form of sexual dysfunction or a dampening of sexual drives. So if that's something that you're concerned about and you're taking these drugs, in which if a doctor prescribed them to you, please don't stop taking them, and definitely never try to quit them cold turkey. Always follow a cessation plan. But if it's concerning you that you're having this decreased sexual drive in this particular time, that's something that the doctor who prescribed the drugs to you, you may wish to talk to them, because it could be, if it's some sort of benzodiazepine, like if it's more of a depressant than a stimulant, like if it's not an amphetamine, if it's more of like an SSRI or like an MAIO inhibitor, then it may decrease your sexual drive if it's lowering acetylcholine levels. So I'd consult with your doctor before you get too concerned about a change, because that drug interaction could be a catalyst for that change, coupled with a legitimate acute depressive episode based on situational anxiety. That's going to dampen a sexual drive regardless, because your body goes into kind of like a fight or flight mode where your noradrenaline, your norepinephrine just like peaks. And once you're finding that balance again, especially if there's a drug that's an inhibitor, that could be just a natural neurological response. So sorry to interrupt, but when I heard you were on drugs, it immediately kind of gave me that flag, because right now your neurotransmitters weren't operating at an optimal level anyway, because you had an acute onset of a traumatic experience. And then on top of that, you're now acclimatizing to a neuropharmacological agent that sometimes it takes a little while to balance those out while you need to utilize them.
Yeah. I mean, like I cannot speak that freely with my psychiatrist, because she is pretty much religious. So I'm trying to
Oh gosh.
for a secular point of view.
Yeah, and that's a valuable thing. I guess I just want to cut in and suggest, I don't know your situation, and certainly there are limitations. Sometimes the best help you can get is the best help you can get. But if you feel like you can't talk openly and honestly with the person who is prescribing you psychiatric medications, there's a meaningful problem that needs to be addressed there.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like they have time to listen to you, if you don't feel like they understand what you have to say, or if you feel like they dismiss what you have to say because of their own biases or religious beliefs or whatever else, then you want to do everything you can to find a different prescriber who's able to meaningfully listen to what you have to say, because it's very hard to find the right drug when you're talking about depression. These medications can be very helpful, but many of them can be pretty damaging, and so you want to find the right drug for you, and that's a conversation that has to be detailed and a little bit intimate.
Well, that is the issue, though, because here in Colombia, there is a lot of religious doctors, per se, and I told her that I am an atheist, and no matter what the outcome is, I need to get help, whether it's through her or through another doctor, but I need to get help.
Yeah.
And well, so far, it's been kind of helpful, but she is like a kind of like putting things that shouldn't be there in the first place. Like, for example, the God baggage. Like, oh, you should repent to your God, to God, because that is whatever.
I'm sorry. Oh my God.
And like, I have no idea. I just don't know, because every single person that I talk to here in Colombia, it's religious. So like I'm like tight-handed right here.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, because you're on an an absolute catch-22 situation. You have a doctor who you need to support you through a transition period of severe trauma, but simultaneously you have a doctor that in order for anybody in the mental health field to be able to adequately assist you, you need to be able to be open to them in dialogue, and they need to know what all of your concerns are and how to address them. And that includes physiological responses. So I'm trying to think of a way that you can parse the fact that this is like a physiological response that you're having without referencing that you are actually looking to engage in sexual activity. Like, perhaps you can say, I used to have a higher sex drive, and now I find my libido is lower. That doesn't necessarily kind of give away the ghost that you're actually looking to engage in sexual activity. But you can say, this is a physiological change that I've noticed that's pretty dramatic to me. So is there something we can do to control my dosages to see if I can feel a little bit more like myself, because that physiological change is making me uncomfortable? That may be a way for you to approach her. I thought I heard you say her, without saying, listen, I want to have sex with my girlfriend. Or I thought you said girlfriend too. I'm sorry. I get frustrated when stuff like this happens. So I'm sorry if I'm misremembering. But that might be a way for you, because I was problem solving in my head at points to listen. But that may be a way for you to approach her without having the fear of feeling her judgment in that scenario, because you're approaching it from a medical perspective, saying, this is a dramatic physiological change that I've taken notice of, and that's of a concern to me, because it means that my physically and mentally I'm dramatically different than what I was previously, and see if maybe that works as a way to approach conversations with her about libido and see how those go, and also conversations about dosage levels and types of medication to see if you can find a balance that's more beneficial to the way you actually want to live your life, which is what those medicines should be doing.
Well, it was doing it before, but right now, because it passed like the October 1st, and that was my sister's birthday,
Oh.
And the rush coming back to it, it is just so overwhelming. So like I just don't know how I feel about it, you know.
Yeah.
So like I'm like so fucked up. Like
You don't
literally so fucked up.
You don't need to know how you feel. Sometimes you do. Sometimes how you feel doesn't make sense, and it's not supposed to. It's just how you feel. We tend to think that because we're conscious of how our neurochemistry manifests in most situations, that we have some semblance of control over it, and we don't always. So sometimes, because we don't always, or even often, when our brain is reacting, the thoughts that come to our mind and the way that we deal with them, the way they manifest and the way that we feel them doesn't make sense. And attempting to organize them in a fashion that does make sense doesn't make sense. Sometimes we just need to be able to allow ourselves to go through an experience the best we can without focusing too much on trying to organize that experience, because then we can become caught in it. Now, I can't, and nobody here can give you long-term advice that's going to be able to get you through this. But if I can tell you anything, I would tell you to keep going to see the counselor if that's the only option that you have, or the psychologist or psychiatrist, and do the best you can to work with her in the fashion that you can. I'm very, very, very sorry that she's not who she should be for you. And I recognize that. And seek out other support systems outside of that so that you can feel supported, whether it's online or family members or friends, other people that you can have discussions and dialogues about your feelings and what happens to you. If it's something that you need to do more often, like you're doing right now, and sort of in an anonymous environment, there are forums that you can go to, and Recovering from Religion is a great place to go.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful place.
I to them before.
Oh, good.
Good.
Yeah, because like I was an atheist since like 2 years ago, so I'm like pretty new about it. So like I'm rediscovering the world around me, and but my whole family is Catholic, and like ever since the murder happened, Mama has been telling me to go to church. She was I went with her to church to support her, and then I seen that it was kind of indoctrination, because I felt like she was doing it because I'm an atheist right now,
Yeah.
and that is not the right way. So like I cannot even tell my family that, well, my mom knows, but I cannot tell my uncles, I cannot tell my aunt, I cannot tell anyone that I'm an atheist, because like the baggage that comes with it, it is just overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel
So
you.
like,
I am the only atheist in my family as well. And
yeah,
at least the only one who says that they are. Who knows? There may be other people in your family who are feeling the same way and also are not saying because they're scared of the backlash.
Sure.
yeah, and then plus like with my disability, like I cannot move. Like I can walk, but I walk like I limping, right? But I cannot walk far distances,
Right.
because like I get like bruises, and I get blisters, because I used a brace. So like I have no clue whatsoever of what I'm gonna do with my life.
Yeah, it sounds like working with hopefully a different psychiatrist, if that's an option for you, but at least some sort of social worker or counselor who's able to help you kind of navigate these systems and find the right clinicians for you and get plugged into a more comprehensive care plan is going to be a really important step. Unfortunately, I don't know the resources that are available where you are. Shannon definitely mentioned Recovery from Religion. I'm glad that you've worked with them in the past, but they do have some limited databases that cover at least a jumping off point in a number of different countries. So if you haven't specifically asked that question, I think that would be a good idea to do. And certainly we'll see what other information we're able to pull up and might be able to pass along.
Okay. So are you telling me that to call back?
Yeah, or if you could shoot us an email actually with just some basic information about how we could get in touch with you and about where you are. I'd be happy to pass along any maybe just general contact information. There are a couple of different databases I could take a look at for you, and if you'd like to write in, and this is true of anybody watching, we're sex@atheist-community.org. We're not researchers. We don't necessarily have connections all over the globe, but we do know some pretty incredible people, many of whom do have connections all over the globe. So if there's anything that we can track down or put you in touch with, I'd definitely love to point you in the right direction, because this seems like a really meaningful struggle at a very difficult time.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Mo. Be strong. Be strong, Mo. We appreciate you. You're important.
Yeah.
You matter.
Yeah, but it's so difficult. But thank you so much.
Yeah, please shoot us an email and we can help keep this conversation going and see if there is anything that we might be able to direct you towards. And if not a good therapist or social worker where you are, there are all kinds of international online options and some different things to explore. So there's definitely hope out there. I know that it seems like resources are really limited, and that's because they are. And I don't want to dismiss that, how difficult it is to find a good connection. I mean, even here in Austin, I work with people on a daily basis that are struggling to pay my fees when they are looking for therapy, who are struggling to find psychiatrists, who are struggling to find these things. So these are real problems, and it sounds like you're in a very extreme situation. But I also know that the world is full of incredible people who are remarkably motivated to be part of the solution. And so I'd love to try and see if we can't get you in touch with some of those folks.
Okay, I'm gonna write to you, and then I'm gonna write also to recovering from.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great place to start. I hope that they can get you set up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for calling.
We appreciate your bravery and calling in.
Thanks, Mo.
All right, bye.
Bye. Whew.
Yeah, really heartbreaking. I mean, we're hearing some beautiful stories tonight.
Yeah, beautiful and really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I forget. Not everybody here works on a suicide hotline. So
yeah, I love this show. I just love this show so much. Thank you so much, Shannon, for being willing to jump in there and offer your advice, because you clearly kind of know what you're talking about with some of these things. So happy to have you on today.
I'm very, very, very pleased to be here, and I'm sorry I'm so mouthy. But when I hear people hurting, if I feel like I might have a solution, I try to say something so that they can at least hear that I heard them and that it matters to me.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, resources are limited, but there are incredible people that are, looking to help. So thank you for being part of the solution.
Thank you. Secular therapy project's also really good too. That's another place that's
a branch of Recovering from Religion.
Oh, are they? I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's why I like them so much.
Right.
They're in every video description. I put Recovering from Religion, the Clergy Project, and the Secular Therapy Project in every single video description. Every video I post.
Oh yeah. So before we go, we've got a couple of minutes left, and I do want to make sure that we give you time to plug everything that you're doing now, everywhere that people can find you. But I thought it would be kind of fun to end the show by having you give us sexual humanism designations.
Oh, but you know the rule though. You're supposed to give yourself
do
your
it yourself.
own.
Okay.
But then I ordain you in the name of AIG High Men.
I love it. Love it. Okay. All right. Let's do this.
Monsignor of Munching.
Oh.
Done. Done. You have to change your Twitter handle too, by the way. That's a rule.
Oh man. Okay. I tried to put you on the spot and you turn it right back on me. That is okay.
Christy was ready.
You were ready. You had that.
Right
It's not
there.
like I don't just think about this stuff all the time.
Let's see. It's a good. Let's go with.
Orator of oral fixations. I don't know. Work with me here. Come on. You got to give me something.
I'm trying to think of one that starts with a Y, but I don't think there are any.
Well, I'll tell you what, while you're caught on the spot, there are some really incredible people watching this program right now, as well as a number of brilliant folks that'll be watching it over the next couple of days, listening to the podcast, jumping into the Discord after the show is over. So I'd say we go ahead and crowdsource this one.
Okay. Well,
Oh.
I'm open to suggestions. The one I'm going with for now is the arbiter of yes and.
Oh, I love it.
It's good work. It's good work.
Yes. In the name of AIG, you are both ordained. Hi, men.
Hi, man.
Hi, men. I need to find better prayer hands, though. Like, what should I do?
Gotta do-
Like, hi,
I
men.
have upside down crisscross, where you start here and then you go down here.
Oh, that's what you did.
But can you do
that
it
too.
with, with 2 in the pink and 1 in the,
You do a shocker and you start with the brain.
shocker, yeah.
You go to the crotch.
There you go. Okay, we just had to remember. This is it.
Ah!
Thank you.
To the podcast audience, it's worth checking out the last few days.
Yeah. Go to YouTube. It's worth it. Oh my gosh. Thank you again, Shannon. Where can people find you? Where can people hook up with you?
I have the world's least creative YouTube channel name. It is Shannon Q. If you can see my name beneath me, that's how to find me. It's super easy. I'm on Twitter. I'm not sure if I'd recommend that though. My Twitter's a bit of a dumpster fire, but it's Shan with 2 N's _Q0. I have a Discord server. I don't know how you find Discord servers other than the link, but they're in my video descriptions. And I'm Shannon Q' tube on Facebook because again, I'm not clever.
Hey, consistent branding. We love it here.
And, I'll make sure to include links to all of those different outlets and places in the footnotes to the episode for folks who'd like to check that out. It'll be in the YouTube comments.
Perfect. You want to take us out?
Yeah, well, I guess I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined us and everybody who called in. We really heard some incredibly beautiful stories, and I'd like to remind everybody that, again, the Discord channel conversation is going to keep going after the show is over, but the email address is always available, so please reach out, let us know what V should be officially ordained as, or if we're going to go ahead and lock that one in. Of course, I want to say thank you to Shannon and all of the insight that you've brought to the table and just the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'd also just wanted to take a quick moment to say thank you to all the folks in the booth that were able to kind of make this happen.
Yes,
We had some
crew
sort
cam.
of last minute
Woo!
folks coming in and getting all that going for us. So thank y'all good folks for keeping the energy up. So, with that, I suppose it's time to just remind everybody to keep the conversation going, to jump on the Facebook, to jump on the Discord, everywhere else. And until then, to go out and give themselves a big ol' orgasm. Or better yet, give somebody else one.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing?
No, you're done.